Welcome in, everybody, to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops. Jake and Dunny with you as always. Today, we're going to be talking about the Western top contenders, the Western Conference, and the best teams in it. Who's ready to make a deep playoff push? Who might be a little underprepared? And maybe, a few dark horses in there. But before we get into that, a word from our friends over at Manscaped, because Happy Hour Hoops and Trainwreck Sports is brought to you by Manscaped. Guys, the flowers are blooming, the grass is growing, it's time to chop the weeds. Thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped, you can trim your holes safely and efficiently, and I am talking about ball trimmers, but they don't just have ball trimmers. Jake, have you ever heard of the Weed Whacker?
No, it sounds dangerous, but I'm gonna believe that it's not here.
Yeah, it does sound dangerous, but in fact, it is not. This is a nose and ear hair trimmer from Manscaped. It provides skin-safe technology, which helps prevent tug in the delicate holes. No more gross nose hairs flying in the wind. So it's springtime, you can clean yourself up, and you can get nice and sexy to watch the NBA playoffs.
Wow.
Let's get into it.
We need that for those ear hairs, bro. You guys, look out for those ear hairs. They start coming in. You don't want to keep those hanging around.
No, you don't.
All right. So getting ready for the NBA playoffs, like you said, we'll jump off of that. We're right around the corner. It's like It's gonna be dropping tomorrow, April 30th, last day of April already. I don't know where the time's going. Usually we'd be full swing into the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this is it's been throwing me off, man. It's really been throwing me off that we're about to go into May and there's still no playoff games. There's basically usually, tonight's draft night as we're recording this. Usually it's going up against NHL and NBA. It's just a crazy night. But the draft's all alone. We still got to wait a couple weeks. Are you coping okay? Has this just been I guess for you with your Celtics, it's at least been interesting, good and bad the last couple weeks. You had that, but do you like the wait? Do you like going into May and then we get it into the summer, or would you rather be full into playoffs right now?
I don't know. I think last summer threw me for a loop. The bubble, it was almost too good to be true. I really enjoyed being able to come home from work and just having playoffs on in the summer. You just never experienced playoff basketball like that. And I think just this whole season, once we were mid-January, February, really in the thick of the season, I kind of forgot that playoffs weren't approaching soon and that they weren't happening until in the summer again, or at least the beginning of the summer. So yeah, it's been a little weird, but you're right. The Celtics have been a distraction, good and bad. Usually bad lately. But yeah, it's been all right. I'm excited. Just the fact that we have NBA playoff basketball with fans, I'll take it in whatever month it's in right now.
Facts. I'm not complaining about anything at all. It's just been weird for me to that today. It's been hitting me that today's the draft and we just haven't even we're in the slog part of the NBA season. It's just not not natural at all. And I don't know. Change in life it's a weird thing to deal with. But I mean I know I'm gonna be hyped when it's, July and we're getting NBA finals games. That's gonna be otherworldly for me. So I'll take the trade-off. But let's get into it. Let's get into the stuff here. Before we get into the contenders, you want to start around with the news and notes. Dunny, you want to lead us through the news and notes from around the league?
Yeah, so nothing crazy so far, and honestly, some no-brainers from a few teams here. Starting with the Clippers, this happened today. Woj said that Clippers are signing Yogi Ferrell for the rest of the season, and a few days ago they did the same with DeMarcus Cousins. Boogie's played a few games with the Clippers now already. I believe they plan to keep him on for the rest of the season. He's played some notable minutes. Obviously, a talented veteran big man. Serge Ibaka's been dealing with some nagging injuries all season long. I think they probably just want to add some depth. And then same Yogi Ferrell. I mean, we don't see him getting big playoff minutes, but if something would ever happen to Rondo or if Pat Bev stays out of the lineup for longer than expected, then I'm guessing that's why they did that. And then we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It just makes sense for the Nuggets to keep on Austin Rivers, and they are doing that. Woj also tweeted today that the Nuggets are keeping Austin Rivers on for the rest of the season. And that's probably, to fill that scoring void without Jamal Murray, who is out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's these teams loading up with their depth. I mean, we'll get into the West, but the West is about to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. And I mean, we don't want to be – and the way the season's been, it's been a knockdown, drag-out fight. Whoever is going to endure is going to be NBA champion at the end of the year. So
you do not want to be undermanned going into these Western playoffs.
And these are all guys that can produce in a playoff series if they need to. Like, I know that they're guys that have, it doesn't seem like that. And maybe, especially with Austin Rivers, like this dude, I don't understand how he's been all over the league at this point. It's crazy to me that he can't like find a spot on a roster, a sustained spot. I mean, he got kind of bumped out of that guard rotation in New York, which is looking pretty damn good. That's doesn't look like a bad decision now.
Yeah, he just wasn't a good fit. I don't think.
And so it's been interesting to see these teams kind of try to load up and see what positions they're worried about too. Like obviously we know with the Nuggets losing Murray has been one of the biggest subplots of the season so far. But the Clippers, I mean, that squad. We'll get into the Clippers more and more, but they just baffle me. I really don't know like what to expect, and even like getting Boogie in there and getting Yogi Ferrell in there, it's like I just this core of these guys, no matter what, like I don't know. They're just a baffling team to me. I just was expecting something bigger to happen with them on the buyout market, in the trade market, everything coming into this season with the Clippers. I thought there was still another move to be made, and they just never did it. And if this is it, like I guess we'll find out a lot about them if they think that last year was more of an anomaly or not. I was just expecting more from them. So it's just weird to be like, this is what the Clippers have done.
Yeah, it is weird. But we talk about one team from LA. Do you want to get into it with the other team from LA? Because, they're a team where it's been bumps in the roads, it's been up and downs, but now it might be the stars are aligning for our reigning champs. LeBron's on his way back. AD's back on the hardwood. We've seen a little bit of that AD Drummond. It hasn't been perfect so far with the Lakers, but they're still the number one defensive rating in the entire league, and now they have LeBron on his way back, and I feel like it can't happen soon enough. I mean, they need him right now.
Yeah, man, it's been such a weird year for the Lakers, just because it really hasn't been. We haven't seen them all together, the squad that we're going to see them going to the playoffs at all. I mean, everybody's come in at different times. With AD going out a couple months ago and then coming back, LeBron, so we see this version of the Lakers without AD and just Bron, and got to see them kind of like try to figure each other out and try to gel and everything. Then Bron gets hurt, and then it's like, okay, let's see what this team has, all together, just all these guys left over. Like, how can they come together without the two guys that basically the whole offense and defense was built around? It's essentially a whole different team for the last couple months. And they've been solid. They've been a 500 club, nothing crazy, but they've kept it, steady and afloat to the point where they're still in the 5 seed, still in a great position. And for the Lakers, they want to avoid that 6 seed, to avoid that possible matchup with the Clippers or the Suns in that 2 or 3 spot. We'll get to that in a little bit. But now, and then they added Andre Drummond, so then they're trying to infuse this into their lineup, and it's a whole other different thing because they're really trying to get him involved. So the team's adjusting to that, and now AD is coming back, and now LeBron's about to come back. So it's been a season of flux for the Los Angeles Lakers. But all that to say, there's the thing that I come back to every time I think about the Lakers is that the last time LeBron wasn't in the NBA Finals was now not in this decade, not in last decade, but 2 decades ago in 2009.
That's pretty weird, man.
It's crazy. That's the last season that we saw a team that did succeed at last year in Cleveland. Since then, LeBron has been in the NBA Finals. So I don't know. I don't know what to think here. I want to think that this would be the year that you can go against the Lakers with this team. Just all things go against them. Yet here I am, and I still can't decide why they shouldn't be the favorites if these two are on the court.
Yeah, so I guess to go off of that, what I was going to ask you was, I mean, you kind of touched on a little, Bron coming back, does that already make them the favorite? Because coming into this year, like LeBron and AD running it back, that the outside of those two, the roster looked a little different, and now it looks even more different. Does Bron coming back, are they still that favorite, or have they fallen behind a bit? Obviously, not record wise. We know where they are. They're the 5th seed in the Western Conference. Everyone still thinks they could still make it to the finals from the 5th seed. It might be a little tougher of a journey, but we all think that AD and Bron can do it. But just as a whole, have they fallen behind? Is Bron going to need to catch up on his wind a little bit? Is AD really 100% right now? What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, like in the West, I think they still have to be the favorites because I don't think collectively we trust Utah or Phoenix enough to make them the favorites, right? Like no matter, like we're sitting here looking at this. I look at the standings every day and see Utah and Phoenix at the top, and I'm like, yeah, but like, are they really like it? I don't think we believe in that enough.
They're but teams right now, just because. I mean, we haven't seen it. We're having this conversation because the Lakers are coming off a championship.
Yeah. And that's why we started with them. Like they're the team that everybody's focused on for good reason because they have that DNA and they still have the best tandem in the NBA when they're healthy, bar none. Like regardless of if they played together or not, we've seen what they can do when they're together. So I don't know, man. It's so weird out West right now because like those two teams, we have the question marks about when they get to the playoffs. So then the biggest, foe in the way of the Lakers defending their championship is the Clippers. And no one wants to give the Clippers any credit for anything after last year. Like no one, like everybody's like, yeah, but like like what about Paul George? Like what if he just disappears? What if all these things happen with the Clippers? And so it's like you can poke holes in all the Lakers arguments and all these things, but then it's like, okay, but who are you picking over them? And it's really like you can't make a compelling enough case to pick against LeBron James and Anthony Davis for me. I might have picked the Nuggets if Jamal Murray was healthy, just the way Jokic is playing. But without Murray, it's gonna be tough.
Well, that was what I was just gonna say. We can, we can segue into the Nuggets after this.
Yeah, go for it.
But if the playoffs started today, we'd see a Lakers Nuggets first round matchup. And, people are saying, it might be tough for the Lakers to get out of the West starting at the 5th seed. Well, not necessarily. I think, obviously Bron's back, Bron's healthy. I think that's an easy series victory for the Lakers, if you ask me. I mean, you mentioned it. No Jamal Murray. Austin Rivers obviously doesn't fix that. He's, he'll provide a boost in scoring, but that's about it. And we saw this matchup in the playoffs last year. They fell short with Murray, and now we have a LeBron, a more motivated probably LeBron James. He's been sidelined for so long. He's itching to get back. And then you have this duo of Anthony Davis and Andre Drummond who can handle Jokic. I mean, they're not going to check him and, make him have bad games. He's still going to get his, but handle him enough where they don't have the firepower outside of him.
Yeah. So the one worry we'll go into the Nuggets here after this and confidence naturally going over there. I think the thing that worries me about the Lakers is that besides Dennis Schroeder, I don't know what we're getting out of these guards this year.
Yeah.
Alex Caruso is Alex Caruso, right? Like we know what we're going to get from him, but they obviously don't have enough faith in him to start him, give him those big minutes. He's a clear role player for that team. But while these guys have been it hasn't been as great of a year for KCP as it was last year. Wes Matthews can't even get on the floor anymore. He's had DNPs on and off the last couple weeks. They're giving Ben McLemore a ton of minutes. And there's a reason Ben McLemore has not worked out in a lot of places. He's a great shooter, but he's not going to provide anything else. And he's a smaller guy that really can't defend. And that's what they're going to be missing from the guard position. They had Rondo and Danny Green back there last year. Like we can't undersell everybody's mileage might vary on those two players, and that's fine. But those two guys are still NBA champions. Who have been great defenders throughout their career. And you can ask LeBron James himself about how good of defenders
both
they are.
Those guys, yeah. I vividly remember that strip that Danny Green had on LeBron in the playoffs when he was a member of the San Antonio Spurs. Like I can still close my eyes and see that. And I honestly, back then, I didn't know Danny Green was about that until that play.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're talking about Rondo, like same deal. I mean, both champions with two different teams, both still have something left in the tank. Like, I think you're right on. And yeah, that's a worry for me too. What are they getting out of these guards, and who's it going to be?
How good is Dennis Schroeder? That's what we're going to find out. We know how good Anthony Davis and LeBron James are, but when they need somebody else to create in that moment, is it Schroeder? Can Kuzma step up and not just be a bit player this year? Is it Talen Horton-Tucker? Is it Talen maybe? The guy. I mean, I think he's going to get a ton of burn. So we'll see what happens. All right, so the Nuggets. This is for our boy Meerkat. Dunny, how are you feeling? What's your temperature check on the Nuggets since Murray's went out? Because Jokic has still just been unreal since that happened.
And he's been in his tail off, and I mean, he's going to have to do that in the playoffs every single game, like night in, night out. He can't make mistakes. He can't have a poor shooting night. He can't go to sleep on defense with some of these bigs. I mean, it's tough to say. They could make it past the first round. Like I said, if it's Lakers Nuggets, I don't think that's happening. There's still some room for some of these seedings to change. We have about 10 games left in the regular season. It's going to be tough. I don't know. I believe Jokic could, end the season being the MVP. Do I think he has enough to put every single guy on this Nuggets team on his back? I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see major contributions from MPJ, Austin Rivers, who we keep mentioning, guys like Will Barton, everyone, all players.
Can we give MPJ his flowers though? Because the dude's been playing like he's all of a sudden in top 15 players since that happened too.
Yeah, I mean he's played great. It's kind of just same thing for me as we talked about with the Lakers, and it's different with these guys because if you're worried about guard depth on the Lakers, you still have a guy like LeBron James who can do everything, and he can run point if need be. He always does. The Nuggets don't have that luxury. Jokic obviously can run point, but you don't want him, killing himself by using all this energy all game long, trying to be a point center and trying to do too much. You don't want that. You want to run the offense through him, but the lack of guards, I guess, that they trust in big moments is what they're going to miss in the playoffs, because that's what Jamal Murray is best at more than anything else. I mean, he's a great scorer. He can get to the basket. He can shoot from outside. But I'd say his big thing and what he's best at is hitting shots when they count for real, especially in the playoffs. We saw first of that last year, and now they don't have a guy like that. So, it's kind of just let's wait and see how Jokic does it, and it's gonna fall on him. Can he do it or can he not?
Yeah, man, it's a big ask of a guy, right? Like we've never seen anything like that before with Jokic. Mm-hmm. That's a different kind of level of play that we need to see to get through this West too. I mean, so we're talking about the matchups here quick. It was Nuggets Lakers in that 4-5, and so their path, they'd probably face Utah in the second round. And then you face assuming the higher seeds are all winning here, you'd either face the Suns or the Clippers in the conference finals. I mean, that's a tough road for Jokic, who's been grinding this whole year, just a guy, like you said, has a ton of minutes, has a ton of usage on him right now. And without that guard support, I mean, their guards are just falling like flies right now. It's just tough to see. It's going to be tough to see them get through the Lakers in general. I mean, it's just a tough ask, I think. And it's tough for me to envision as well. They should hope. I mean, the Mavs are a game and a half back right now and own the tiebreaker over the Lakers. If somehow that happens, that's the matchup you want. And then you get a Lakers-Clippers series potentially in the first round, which would be outstanding. Like that's their best case scenario to move forward.
And then have those LA teams beat each other up. Hopefully get a tired one of those two teams, and then, count your blessings after that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I guess the lone question for you is, can Jokic play better than he is right now? I mean, is that even possible? He's for some people, he's the clear-cut MVP, has been, since the first couple months of the season until now. I mean, like you mentioned, our guy Meerkat, he's willing to defend that to
He's
the
been
death.
hyping it up. Yep.
That Jokic is his MVP, and I know a lot of other people believe that too. But can he even play better? We know he's going to need to. Is that really even possible? I mean, this is a guy who's averaging 26 points, just under 11 rebounds, and just under 9 assists a game. I don't know. I mean, maybe the scoring goes up, but that's what he's going to need. He's going to need to be like a 32 per game.
Yeah, man. I don't know about all that. Not against Anthony Davis. I think it's just gonna be tough. They better hope. Luka pulls out some shit the next couple weeks or so for them. That's their best case scenario, because I just don't see that Lakers matchup going well for the Nuggets. Let's go. Let's move. Let's just keep going. We weren't planning on this, but let's just keep going reverse order as we're going here, because the most interesting team for me in the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm ready to pick them to go to the finals again. I don't know. Like, I'm back and forth. Like, last year I was like so terrified of them, and now this year I feel like I'm not scared enough of the Clippers, and that it's going to be like one of those Kawhi things where it's just he pulls it out of his ass again. Do you think Kawhi can do this if Paul George is playing less up to the ability that he's currently playing right now? Like, does Kawhi need Paul George to be the super duper star he's been the last couple months? Or can they withstand, something like last year happening?
I think he doesn't need to be playing at what he is right now, but I think, one, it's unacceptable just for him. And I don't think they'll win if he plays like he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
So something in between what he's doing right now in the regular season and what he did last year in the playoffs, I think would be acceptable. But I mean, he can't go as cold as he did last year in the playoffs again this year and expect the Clippers to win. I think they're even in a better spot. I like their roster better this year. But I still think that he needs to be Kawhi's right-hand man, especially if they do get themselves in a series where it is Clippers and Lakers, and they need to beat each other up. Paul George needs to be that guy who's hitting shots. He needs to be that guy who's hitting outside shots, especially from the three. I mean, PG needs to show up. I think he knows that too. He tried to give a heartwarming speech to rally the troops last year and kind of got ignored. And now he's playing out of his mind. I think he's got his head on a swivel, and he kind of has the right idea, and he knows that if playoff P, pandemic P, if that happens again, I don't think he wants to even hear from the media. So I think I'm optimistic for Paul George. It's not even that like I'm rooting for him. I just think that's how it's going to go, because he kind of has no other choice.
Or else, Paul.
Yeah, right.
Or fucking else, bro.
Yeah.
No, I think we've talked about it with the Heat. We've talked about it with a bunch of teams, just how last year the bubble was not a normal situation. It just wasn't. No. It was the strangest time in all of our lives, let alone these NBA players' lives. And it is a complete left turn from what they experience in the day-to-day in the NBA. And I'm sure, as weird as this year's been with COVID stoppages and all the testing and all the shit that they have to do, that they would still take this over the bubble any day of the week. So I think it affected these teams. And I always, as much as I wanted, love to give Denver the credit for coming back in that series, and Jamal Murray was incredible, the Clippers were up 3-1, and we were literally just a quarter, one not so bad quarter. They imploded too, the Clippers, in these games. It wasn't even like the Nuggets came out and dominated for 3 games straight. They were going down 15, 20 points. And then the Clippers were just all right, we got this in the bag, and imploding. So we've based this, as a collective, NBA fans have based this huge disappointment on the Clippers, because obviously you go down 3-1, it's tough. It's not a good look. Obviously, it's not something you want to happen ever, or you want to have on your resume, or want to hear about ever again after it happens. But they were still up 3-1, and they were still in that position. And if they go and play the Lakers, who knows? Because the way that those games were so charged last year, who knows who gets into whose head Like the Clippers played them as harder than anybody else they played against last year. You could tell when those two teams got on the floor that the Clippers were out there, giving it that little extra gear because they just wanted to prove that they were better, that they didn't want to hear about all this the other LA team. They didn't want to hear all that shit. So when we come back now and they've had that experience together now, like this is a team that I like teams that, kind of grow together. Like, and if it wasn't something last year that wasn't clicking chemistry wise, you would think over this last year that if they haven't made wholesale changes yet, that there's got to be more. It's got to be better in that locker room. It's got to be a better atmosphere. Ty Lue must have it as a better, overall atmosphere for these guys to feel more, cohesive and more like a unit. That's my optimistic view of the Clippers, at least.
Yeah, and as Paul George would say, it's because Doc's not there trying to use him like he used Ray Allen.
Yeah.
But honestly, my biggest X factor, and I don't think it's because, I just think moving into the playoffs, I'm not even saying like what's going on right now and what they've already accomplished this season. And mind you, the Clippers are second in the offensive rating in the entire league and second in net rating. So, we can't ignore this regular season, even though it doesn't mean much because, we saw what happened last year. But moving into the playoffs, I think Rajon Rondo is the X factor here.
This is the Rondo podcast, bro. We're just hyping him up.
I love Rondo. Because even if like, say, Paul George is doing his thing and he's doing his bad thing and he's shooting poorly and Leonard's off the floor for whatever reason, like even if you have a lineup where it looks like Rondo, Terrence Mann, Batum, Morris, and like Zubac or something, like I still trust Rondo to like just do well with a group like that. And I think, it's just so important to have a guy like him. I mean, we just talked about the Nuggets and the Lakers not having a guy like Rondo to be able to control the pace of the game, play defense, and not get beat by better guards. Like, it's just so important. He's won championships with two different teams. And even outside of Rondo, they just have the playoff experience, championship experience. I mean, we're talking Rondo, Kawhi, Ibaka, Paul George, all vets who have made deep playoff runs. Paul George, not the deepest of playoff runs, but he's been there many times, whether it was Indiana, OKC, Clippers. And then you have Nick Batum and Cousins now too. So right now for me, it's the Clippers have it on paper. It's just kind of time to, hone it all in and do your thing. And I think Kawhi's injury, I don't think he should be out going into the playoffs. I think he'll be back within the next few days here. The original diagnosis was like a week or something. So, no real excuses here for the Clippers. It's just kind of time to do it.
I don't believe NBA injuries anymore. I don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like James Harden's probably walking around. He feels fine. And they're just like, we'll just let it go. Like, I just don't trust any, especially Kawhi now. Fuck it. Like, I don't trust anything he says injury wise. I like what you said about the most complete, like, about the roster, because I'm with you. Like, they're built for every situation. And that was the thing last year too, that I couldn't get over with them, is that they're the best built team, or like, to match up with anybody. They can match up with damn near anybody that they're going to face.
Yeah.
And that's scary. That should be scary for the Lakers, especially, because if you shut the Lakers offense this year, if you shut down, like, first of all, we don't even know what option 1, 2, and 3, like, we know who it is, but we don't know what offense works for them with the way their roster's set up, because we just haven't seen it together yet enough. So that's what matchup wise, the Clippers are going to be a nightmare for all these teams. And it's just gonna depend on who comes through with this loaded veteran roster. Like, who's gonna step up in those moments.
It would be cool if we were talking about, the Lakers and Dallas both kind of flirting with that 5 and 6 seed right now. It would be interesting if we saw Clippers Mavericks first round in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Some more Morris and Luka beef. And, that I think that'd be a true test for them.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the Lakers, too. I mean, that would be a scary scarier test for them. But as far as drama goes, Dallas and the Clippers would be a good one.
I can't even imagine what our timelines would be like if we had a Lakers Clippers first round series. Just absurd.
It's very possible right now.
I know it's pretty damn close, and that this next couple of weeks, the seeding is going to be so interesting how these matchups end up. All right, let's get into the last two here before we go. We've talked a lot about these teams the last couple of weeks, but we will touch on them again. The Suns coming off a big win last night. The Suns, I feel like I've watched almost every Suns game the last 2 weeks. I don't know why, just catching up on them. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Suns recently, and somehow it made me less confident in them than I was before. I still think this is a team that is made that they could go to the NBA Finals, and I wouldn't be surprised. But do they have another gear to go to than what they're doing in the regular season right now is what I'm worried. Is this what this team's going to look like in the playoffs? Or is there another wrinkle that they can do? How much do you think that roster is built? They're built well, but it's a lot of unproven guys and a lot of guys that haven't been in that position where you have to get to that extra gear. Do you think, and this is, we can kind of rope this in with Utah too, because it's both these teams as we've talked about, they need to come out and prove, these are teams that haven't been in these positions yet. So what do the Suns, what's your outlook for the Suns right now? Do you still have as much, stock in them as we've had throughout the year, or as we get closer to the playoff time, are you doubting it a little bit more?
I don't know, man. I think I'll doubt it once, I see a poor showing. And I do know what you mean too, because I think a few times I've watched the Suns recently, it was almost like you take a look at their roster, especially if CP3 and Book both aren't out there, or if it's just one of them out there, and you're like, really? This team's competing for the best record in the league right now? It is surprising. And I guess the players that we're doubting here it's guys like Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton. It's just going to be those guys.
Ayton's what scares me the most, to be honest, because you're talking about if they played, say a West Final against the Jazz, or they play against Jokic or AD, Ayton is going to get picked on in any of these series with these talented big guys. Kawhi is going to put DeAndre Ayton in a pick and roll every single time down the floor. And it just comes down to these matchups. And I love the way the Suns match up with damn near every other position on the floor. But Ayton really scares me defensively in these crunch time moments. And if he's not on the floor, who is it? They don't have depth at that position either. So they kind of need DeAndre Ayton to show up. Especially
where he hasn't really been checked much this year, because the Suns have obviously, as a whole, obviously have been playing out of their mind. This is his best season by far, and it's just come easy to him. Playing with a guy like CP3, if you're talented enough with good hands, soft hands, ability to finish at the rim, CP3 just automatically makes your stats better and makes your life easier. So Ayton's kind of just been, being primed this whole year. He might get a little, playoff shock, if you will, if he does see a Gobert, or if he does see an AD Drummond combo. So, yeah, I'm kind of right with you on that. I guess my thing is, I think CP3 can get it done. We've seen that he can flat out lead. What he did with the Thunder last year, obviously they weren't primed for a playoff push, but they made it there and they did their thing. And now we see CP3 just bringing the Phoenix Suns out of the ground and making them one of the best teams in the NBA. Do we have to be concerned, with his playoff years with the Clippers, where those Lob City teams didn't really ever amount to anything in the playoffs? Was that something just based on matchups, or the Clippers didn't work, or do we have a new CP3 now? That was years ago, and we might just have a different player. He might be more experienced. He might be just up for the challenge, more motivated with a different team. I don't know. Do we have to be worried about something like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Because his biggest playoff success was next to maybe a top 5 player of this generation, James Harden. As much as we talk about James Harden's playoff failures, he was, and that was a good combo with him and Chris Paul that year. It was James Harden's team still. I mean, this is Chris. I mean, and you can make an argument, I guess, it's Chris Paul or Devin Booker's team, but I think
Chris Paul's team.
It's Chris Paul's team. It has to be because they didn't make the playoffs with basically the same roster. I know they're a young roster, but Chris Paul has brought it all along. This is his team. This would be his success. My biggest, and that's another one of my biggest worries with this team going forward, is that the only guard dominant team that we've seen really win in the last 10, 15 years are the Golden State Warriors. And Devin Booker and Chris Paul are not Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. They're just not. Maybe Devin Booker has that in him. We've seen him. We've seen him have those kind of scoring outputs in his career. We've never seen him in a playoff situation, and he seems like a gamer. Like, that's the one thing I'm really excited to see what Devin Booker does with his back against the wall, because I think that dude is going to have some incredible playoff performances, kind of like Jamal and Donovan last year. But that's what worries me the most about this team, is that the thing I was bringing up about Ayton, and just the fact that all these teams that have won the last 10 years or so have a big wing that can drive offense, and the Suns just don't. Are they the next Blazers, basically? Like, is that what the Suns' best case scenario is?
True.
With this roster, I mean, they're kind of built almost along the same way. And I've seen people arguing online. They're like, if the Blazers and Suns meet each other, like, I'd pick the Blazers. And I wouldn't put that against you, because then you're picking. I pick Dame over Booker and Paul, like, it just one head to head with that. So that's I'm worried about the Blazers' potential of this roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be tough. And a lot of it is going to come down on CP3. That's the only reason I bring up the Clippers thing. I know it's years ago, and you mentioned his most successful playoff push was with Mr. James Harden, who is obviously a one-of-one talent. So it kind of just comes down to, DeAndre Ayton not shitting his pants when he tough matchup, and Book, if he can pull out a game. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be games where Book needs to score like 40 for them to have a shot at winning. And he has it in him, but can he do it in the big moment? I like that you said the Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray thing. Like, it's your turn now, dude. Like, we've seen these young guys who can go get it and fill up the stat sheet in the playoffs. Like, their first couple chances in it, they did that, and they did it in a big way. Let's see what you got, Book. Your first time here. He's got to go do it.
Yeah, and I think of those three in like the same category a lot. Like just not even same category of player, but they just came out at the same time. They both played, all three of them, two of them at Kentucky, one at Louisville. It's a very similar like star making process for both of them, for all three of them. And so this is the moment we get for Book now to do it. And then, like you said, see him in that moment. So it'll be interesting. I still have a lot of faith in this team. I really do. But the Blazers' potential has started worrying me, and just the Ayton thing is gonna be interesting to see how teams attack Ayton in the playoffs, because I think that he's gonna be the guy that teams are gonna pick on. And we see that in playoff matchups all the time. There's always gonna be one guy. If they find a weak spot, they're coming for you. So we'll see. All right, we got the Jazz here. I don't know how much more we need to say about the Jazz before we wrap up. They're pretty much doing the same shit they've done all year. They fucking scored 154 points against the Kings last night. Like, absolutely unreal. These Jazz, they've said all year long, they think last year that they thought that was the squad. They thought they had figured something out in the bubble and were ready to go forward, and they just got Jamal Murray'd, and that's the way it went down. But they think that's a continuation this year, and that it's showing that. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what more we need to say that we haven't said before, but we just want to see it from the Jazz. I don't think that I'm going to believe anything. If the Warriors play the Jazz in the first round, I might pick the Warriors. Honestly, I'm at that point where I still might do that.
Oh, I would love that. What a great first round matchup that would be. That would just be electric. I gotta see that.
Who wouldn't be cheering for the Warriors?
Yeah, dude. Like, I hate to say it because they are so good, and I like love it for Utah. I think it's cool. I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan. I like Mike Conley all the way back to his, OG Grizzly days. They're just boring. They've just been the best team in the league pretty much all season long. I don't know. It's Gobert gets a lot of shit because he's this overpaid big man who kind of started the spread of COVID last year, or at least got the blame for it.
He got a bad rap, that's for sure.
I just feel like it's a lot of the same. And then Clarkson's kind of had the 6th man of the year locked up like all year. It's just like there's just never been anything new all season long, and that's great for them. It just makes our job a little tougher when we talk about the Jazz. But I guess my biggest thing going into the playoffs, I mean, we've talked about it. Now we've talked about Ayton, we've talked about Jokic, the AD Drummond combo. Who am I leaving out here? I guess just the Clippers have a few decent bigs, nothing crazy with Zubac and Cousins. But it's time for Gobert to be more than just a defensive anchor. I think that's what's going to move these guys forward. If Gobert can, I don't know. I mean, obviously he's not going to step outside and shoot shots, but he needs to be cleaning up on the offensive glass. He needs to be catching every lob that's thrown to him. He needs to be setting good screens. Like Gobert needs to do more than just block shots and grab boards. That's what's going to push them further. That's what is going to allow them to dominate a Warriors team if that's what they're going to do in the first round. If that's the matchup they see, Gobert needs to, pick on those guys. Who they got? Looney and Draymond Green right now is the Warriors bigs. Like Gobert should eat against those guys on both sides of the floor. So it's more than just the entire team having something to prove. And forget what Shaq said to Donovan Mitchell. He's already been proving a lot this season. I think he's getting a bad rap. His name should be even more in the MVP conversation.
That's true.
We're talking about all these guys. He deserves some credit just for the Jazz record alone. But who I'm putting to the test, if I was Shaq, I'd be calling out Gobert. He's overpaid. He's kind of just always been a defensive anchor. He plays boring. Like, do something. Dominate a team with bad bigs in the first round and let that propel you into the following rounds.
Let's see it. We just want to see you guys flourish in Utah. That's all we're asking. Just
I'm not hating.
Come out here and ball. That's all.
Yeah, not hating.
I just want it to be proven. And it'll be interesting to see going forward. All right. Anything else before we go here, Donnie?
I think that's it. I was gonna bring up the Warriors a little bit, but you brought it up. I'm crossing my fingers for Steph. I need those guys to make it out of that play-in tournament and have a real series. Because we talk about stuff that's good for basketball. That's just outstanding for basketball. Need it.
Yeah, we need that. It'll be interesting to see how that play-in matchup ends up. We got the war right now. It is as of today. Our play-in matchups in the West: Portland, Memphis in the 7-8 matchup, and then San Antonio, Golden State. With San Antonio always the boring option who could ruin it for everybody. We've seen that the last couple of years for the playoffs. They might just sneak in there. Who knows? Yeah, but one of the fact that one of Golden State, Portland, or Memphis might miss the playoffs is kind of sad. Not gonna lie, but it will give us some great entertainment for the play-in going forward. So that'll wrap it here for this week's episode, Western Conference check-in. We will be back next week, and going forward, coming into the playoffs, we announced it on Trainwreck 200 last week, but we're going to be coming at you damn near every day from Trainwreck Sports, playoff previews. We're going to be making picks for all our series, everything playoffs. We're ready to dive in and get this season over and get into some playoff basketball going forward. So don't forget to follow us on social at Happy Hour Hoops 1 and follow at Trainwreck Sports.
Yeah, and me and Jake might be having a finals matchup in our fantasy basketball league. I'm ahead in my semifinals matchup. Jake's on the other side in the semifinals. We need that.
I'm also ahead. I've been ahead all week too.
Let's do it. Okay, I thought you were. I didn't want to say false information because I didn't check last night. But yeah, we're both ahead in the semis. We could be meeting in the finals. Obviously, we'll be doing some content for that too. So yeah, maybe once we make it to the finals next week, we'll release our rosters. You guys can tell us what you think, and then we'll do some stuff so you guys can follow along all week.
Yeah, we got to do something with that. I had a very controversial win last week, pulled it out at the end, in literally the last moment. So I'm just happy to be here.
Let's go.
It'll be fun. It's going to be interesting. We'll see how the week develops, and we'll definitely have some stuff out there, and we'll figure something out fun to do for you guys. But playoffs coming soon. Be on the lookout for all that content coming forward. Anything else here? I don't think so. Just enjoy the games this weekend. We'll be back next week. Our boy Spenny is hopping on again at some point. We'll get into the Nets again. The Nets still the favorites in the NBA for the NBA Finals. We'll be making playoff predictions and stuff. I might have already made my finals prediction. So I'm gonna have to stick with that at this point. I don't feel as good about it this week as I was when I was excited to do it last week, but we're gonna keep rolling with it. So yeah, that's it. I think for today. Go follow us at all our socials. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the draft this weekend. Everybody loves the NFL draft no matter what. Stay hydrated and have a good one, folks.